everyone, and welcome to The Future of Sales Show Me the Money, a workshop by Adam Peabody, who it is an absolute pleasure to introduce. Adam has several accomplishments, and just in the interest of time, I may not be able to cover them all. If you are an entrepreneur or a startup in the region, you probably know who Adam is. Adam is the director of Planet Hatch, which is an entrepreneurship center of excellence located in Fredericton. Adam runs multiple accelerator programs, workshops, even teaches at UNB, all because of his commitment to developing globally competitive entrepreneurs and startups. He leads an innovative and dynamic team and is a mentor for many in the region, including myself. Adam is also an active volunteer and serves on the boards of various provincial and national organizations. And without further ado, Adam, I'm going to hand it over to you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Awesome, Nandy. Awesome, Nandy. Well, thanks so much for that introduction, and it's a real pleasure to be with all of you. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you happen to be in the world. Really happy to be with you, and looking forward to our time together. I also, want to say just off the top, huge congratulations to Nandy and his team at UNB, who have been working really, really hard, I know, to make this Apex experience happen. Our team at Planet Hatch, we always look forward to Apex every year because we see such great entrepreneurial talent and ideas and startups, and there's nothing that excites our team more than that type of energy. People, bringing their entrepreneurial skills to solve problems both locally and around the world. And so I know Andy and the team, particularly during this year, which has been extremely uneven and very, very hard to plan, even 2 weeks in advance for them to be working, from the summer moving forward into making this vision a reality that we're all starting to experience today. So really a pleasure to be with you all. I also want to congratulate each one of you who are joining the Apex Pitch competition and participating in today's workshop. And, I can't think of a more daunting time for someone to take the initiative to start up a business. We're really experiencing a world and a year that I think is summed up by the term rapid change. And I just want to congratulate each of you for taking that step and actually trying to create something of value through your entrepreneurial endeavors. There's a lot of your peers across New Brunswick, Canada, worldwide, that are taking this opportunity to really do nothing, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. The meme content, the TikToks, there's a lot of engaging content that you can spend your time working your way through and, not take that crazy step of trying to start up a business or pursue a business idea. The majority of your peers fall into the first camp. There's a lot of them that are sitting back and not taking advantage of this time. So I want to particularly congratulate each of you who have decided to, work through the challenges and the difficulties that COVID-19 has presented, but try to identify the opportunities and to work really hard to seize them. And so that's really commendable and something that I want to congratulate you on. We, across Canada, in New Brunswick, around the world, need more entrepreneurs. I'm a very firm believer in that. And each of you have taken steps towards achieving that goal. So thank you very much. For today's workshop, Nandy mentioned the title, sort of Show Me the Money, the Future of Sales. What I have on our agenda for this afternoon is, first, I want to just give you a little bit more information about who I am, who Planet Hatch is, and the work that we do. Then I want to get into some of the major trend lines that we see that's affecting all industries in relation to their sales. And then finally, I want to walk you through a couple of tools or activities that you can do that can lay the cornerstone or the foundation of your sales strategy. I'll mention at the outset that, there's a lot of great resources and experts, mentors that can help a lot with, the daily blocking and tackling, the actual tactics of sales. And I think that each of you have resources in your communities that you can access to help with that. Planet Hatch certainly can help with that. We run our own sales accelerator program that's been quite successful, and I'll tell you a little bit about that later. But today's workshop isn't going to focus as much on the tactics as, the high level foundational elements that you need to be thinking about as you build your startup, that will, if you do correctly, will set you up for long-term sustainable success with the trends that we see taking place around the world across industries right now. So that will be more of the focus of today's workshop. So with that being said, I'll do a quick introduction of myself and Planet Hatch. Nandy had mentioned I've had the opportunity to work for several different organizations, and I think the through line for my career has been three things. One has certainly been a focus on international business. I've been able to work for national not-for-profit that led international trade missions, trying to promote Canadian exporters as well as attract investment into Canada. We did that actually through Junior Team Canada trade missions, where I led teams of youth aged 16 to 21 around the world trying to promote Canadian industry and culture. Then I had the opportunity to return to my hometown of Fredericton, New Brunswick on Canada's East Coast, and work for Planet Hatch's sister agency called Ignite Fredericton that does more traditional economic development. And in that role, I had the opportunity to work to attract foreign direct investment into Fredericton and also build programming and services that would support local exporters as they tried to penetrate new markets. And then finally at Planet Hatch, where the real focus has been on global competitiveness within the startup stream. At Planet Hatch, we very much believe that if you're waiting until you're profitable within a regional market before you start looking at export, you're already much too late. So international business has definitely been a through line of my career. Two other elements I would say is around innovation opportunities. So not just in the startup space, although that's definitely been an area, but also innovations for more mature companies in terms of productivity, new product development, et cetera. And then finally, I've always had an opportunity and felt very passionate about working with young leaders like yourselves. And I know there's this common phrase that it just drives me up the wall, those leaders of tomorrow or future leaders, right? And I'm sure each of you have been referenced as those future leaders by members of your community, your bosses, or educators, etc. I take a different view. I think that each of you have demonstrated leadership just by being here today. So you are leaders now. It's not sometime in the future. And that's why, I've tried to identify opportunities in each one of my jobs to be able to work, support, and grow that leadership talent, in a world of rapid change. Those that are coming up and coming with the bright ideas tend to be the youth, and I think that often they are neglected as part of our overall strategies for economic development and business success. And so that's a little bit about what drives me and the motivations and experiences that I've had. In terms of Planet Hatch, we are an entrepreneurship center located in Fredericton, New Brunswick. We've been around we're on our 8th year now, so we started in 2013. And as Nandy mentioned, our mission is to develop globally competitive entrepreneurs and startups. And what I mean by globally competitive is not just those that are exporting, although we need many more exporters in New Brunswick and in Canada. What I also mean and is included in that definition is those businesses that are taking best practices from around the world and are able to compete in line with any other company found elsewhere in the world. So an example I'll often use is you can be a globally competitive coffee shop in downtown Fredericton, but it requires you to take certain steps to be able to do that. And our focus at Planet Hatch is around helping entrepreneurs develop business models, business strategies, helping them with their sales and understanding markets to be able to develop that globally competitive startup business. Okay. Some of the ways that we do that, I just realized I'm not sharing my PowerPoint, so apologize, bear with me here. And I'm gonna share that now. Maybe if someone could just confirm in the chat box that you guys can see the PowerPoint I have up
I can
now.
see it.
Okay, awesome. So apologies for that. But right here, you can see what I was talking about. So our mission statement and our focus. On the next slide, you can see some of the core offerings. So, coaching and mentoring our team does. We have opportunities for funding for entrepreneurs. We run 2 locations, one at about 7,500 square feet of co-working and private office space in the research and technology park in Fredericton. Another smaller location in co-working space, about 2,000 square feet downtown. That entrepreneurs can rent out. We do a number of events and a number of programs to bring the entrepreneurs together with other individuals within their network, as well as programs to support them at each stage of the startup life cycle. And a couple of other slides just to give you some context of the types of companies that we're working with. We would typically serve about 180 different startup companies over the course of a year. The first 6 years of business, we were able to support 247 new startups that were created, and proud to report that over 80% of those startups are still in business and growing today. They've created a lot of jobs. They've been able to raise a significant amount of funding. And in the next slide, you can see a little bit in terms of the diversity of the founders that make up the portfolio of founders that Planet Hatch supports. Over a third being led by females, about 10% led by Indigenous founders, and almost fully half of the founders we work with were not born in Canada. So they would come as immigrants to Canada or newcomer entrepreneurs. And then about a third that are in the youth category that are under 20, that are 29 years old or younger. Next slide gives a little bit of a breakdown in terms of the sectors that we support. So one somewhat unique factor with Planet Hatch is that we are sector agnostic. So we don't provide a deep level of expertise within any given sector. We use our network of mentors and subject matter experts to connect entrepreneurs if they need that level of detailed support. However, we really focus on what is common to all entrepreneurs, regardless of their background and the sector of business they're in. And that would be, their business model, their business strategy, their sales and markets. And then finally, a little bit of a sense of the stages that the companies we work with are in. No surprise, about 60% of them are pre-revenue, trying to get to a cash flow positive or monthly recurring revenue. About 25% of the clients we work with have achieved that and are now focusing on scaling and growth potentially through export activity. And then about 15% of our clients are in between those 2 stages. And you can see across in terms of the stage of development, almost a third split between ideation, validation, and growth. So that was a lot of information about Planet Hatch. I was hoping that we could take a moment now and I can get a better read on who is in the audience. If we were in any normal year, we'd be in person and I could call on people. But what I was thinking is I'll ask a series of questions. And what I would like you to do is put your hand up if the statement I'm going to say represents you or your company, okay? And I think most of you guys are familiar, but you can raise your hand. It should be an option either on the right-hand side, on the bottom of your screen, or on the very top of your screen, there's a raise hand. You can leave that up if the statements continue to represent you or lower them if they don't, okay? So I'm really interested in first understanding, who's here from where. So by raising your hands, how many people are located or are from Fredericton? I see 1, 2, about 6 hands up, maybe 7 hands up from Fredericton. Okay. Who here is from New Brunswick, but not in Fredericton? Another community or city in New Brunswick. I see 2. Okay, great. Who's not from New Brunswick, but is from another Atlantic Canadian province? So where the Nova Scotians, the Newfoundlanders, and the Islanders at? Okay, I see we have about 3 others from another region of Atlantic Canada. What about another province in Canada? So I'm thinking Quebec and westward. All right, I see 5 or 6 hands going up from outside of the Atlantic Canadian region. What about another area within North America? So maybe we have some Americans or some Mexicans. Do you have any Americans or Mexicans in? I see 1 hand up. Awesome. And then how about international outside of North America? So who here is from a country outside of North America? All right. Quite a few hands. That's great. I'm really, really glad to see the international representation. All right, next I'm going to ask you a couple of questions to get a better sense of the sectors that the businesses you are working on, which sectors they're in. So who here by raise of hands has a business in the tech, in the IT sector? 1, 2, 3. See about 8. All right, awesome. What about retail? Who's doing sort of direct to consumer or wholesale, more retail oriented product? Anybody in retail? Okay, I see you just 1, I think. Anybody in the bio or life sciences space? Any bio or life sciences type companies? I see 1. Hi, Xavier, by the way. I think just Xavier. What about manufacturing? Anybody doing a business within the manufacturing sector? No manufacturing. Oh, 1 manufacturing. Okay. What about agriculture or aquaculture or forestry? I'll include in that as well. Any more sort of natural resource-based companies? Okay. And then what about personal services? Who's doing a service-based business, direct to consumer? See just 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. All right. And any, oh, more than that. I think we're up to 4 now. And then what about professional services? So a business, your service-based business, but B2B. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, great. Well, that's great for me to be able to get a sense of who's in the room, and as much as possible, I'll try to make this workshop, participatory and engaging and tailored to, the individuals in the room, given the time that we have together. So the next few slides, I'm going to be talking about, what are the major trend lines that we're seeing at Planet Hatch and that I think are represented in global markets that I think, are going to affect your sales and your business overall. And these are really big, major trends that we see taking place that really are going to affect everyone. So the first thing that I want to mention when we're thinking about these trend lines is that they are all being vastly accelerated by this little thing on everyone's mind, which is COVID-19, right? And our entire experience. I really like this quote that I have up by Vladimir Lenin right now. And he said, there are decades where nothing happens, and then there are weeks where decades happen. And what he's talking about is, sort of progress in general. And I think it's fair to say that regardless of what you're looking at during this period of COVID-19, trends that were in existence beforehand are being vastly accelerated by it. And you can look in business, examples in life, that I think will demonstrate this to be true. COVID-19, a funny meme that I've seen, but I've actually heard from a lot of individuals and know this anecdotally to be true. If you were on rocky terms in your relationship, whether it's marriage or a boyfriend or a girlfriend, COVID-19 has put a lot more pressure on that relationship. And if you were thinking you might break up before COVID-19, it has probably come to pass over the last, 10 months or so, right? A lot of engagements, a lot of babies during COVID-19. It's accelerated that part as well, right? In business, there's a number of trend lines that I think similarly are being accelerated. Some of them are quite obvious. Obviously, there's been a huge accelerated movement towards digital platforms for business, whether that is through their sales or if they're a service-based business, digitizing their service instead of having an in-person delivery of it. Those are things that are very common that we're seeing. In the medical space, I know in New Brunswick, there's been an ongoing fight for almost 10 years to try and provide doctors, family doctors, the ability to connect virtually with their patients for, minor consultations around, prescription management or, chronic health conditions. And it took even though it took about 10 years of lobbying before COVID with no real progress, that change was made within about 2 to 3 weeks once the pandemic hit in our province, in our little corner of the world. So these are just some of the examples of that accelerant factor that COVID-19 has brought to a number of trends that were already there before the pandemic. So I want you to think about COVID-19 as an accelerant to a lot of these changes. The first trend that I want to talk to you about is this concept of the future of work. And I know that the future of work can have many different meanings to many different people, but a couple of areas that I think you should be thinking about specifically as it relates to sales is some of the following facts. So in Canada, very reputable study by one of our major banks, RBC, pre-COVID in 2019, estimated that by 2028, because of the increasing adoption of technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, automation, etc., over 50% of the jobs in Canada were going to either be completely eliminated or vastly disrupted because of these technologies being increasingly adopted by employers. 50% of our total workforce in Canada. That's a huge number, and that's by 2028. That estimate was made before the pandemic. I think that we're much closer to that now than 2028 for that to be the case. Another estimate, this is by McKinsey & Co., indicating that about 15% of the global workforce would be required to switch occupations by the year 2030. And again, 15% globally. And then 60% of executives in a LinkedIn study recently saying that their staff would have to be retrained due to automation. 60% of executives saying that retraining is going to have to occur immediately. So what you see happening in the future of work, driven primarily by this adoption of technology, is that how we're going to work and who is going to be in the workforce, that's changing rapidly. And the nature of the technologies, the function that they're accomplishing in replacing these humans is around tasks that are either repetitive or that are pattern-based. That's how those technologies work. And those are the types of individuals in the workforce that they're going to replace. So pattern-based, repetitive tasks. So then the question becomes for you, because in your own businesses, you're going to be trying to sell to these types of organizations who are becoming increasingly flat, that the individuals who are left, because it's increasingly flat and because the repetitive or pattern-based or the simple work is being performed by technologies, those who are left are dealt with a much broader portfolio of work, and that they're having to, the nature of the work is becoming more complex because the things that are ending up on their desk are those issues or tasks that the technology can't perform. So the main takeaway, I think, around this trend of the future of work and how technology is flattening workplaces is that the people you're trying to sell to, one, there's less of those people, and they're in charge of making ever more complicated decisions. And that includes sales. So that's one of the major takeaways around trend lines I want you to remember. The second trend line that I want to talk about is this concept of information asymmetry. Does anyone know what I mean when I say the term information asymmetry? Does anyone have a definition of what I mean by that? Just look for you to raise your hand if you do have an answer. Okay, I don't. Oh, Jim Fang? Or sorry, Asim. Asim.
Yeah. Hey, Adam. By the way, nice presentation. And just quickly, that's my rough guess on. I think it refers to information available to certain workforce which they need. I mean, the divide or lack of information between certain types of roles. That's my rough guess. And sorry if that's very wild.
No, that's great, Asim. Thank you for offering that answer, and you're very, very close. So the definition of information asymmetry is when one party, one person in an economic transaction has more information than the other party in that transaction. And so if you think about sales traditionally, and there's been a lot of research on this, when most people think of sales, what comes to their mind is, that used car salesman. That's what a lot of us envision in our mind, and research has supported this. And the traditional sales methodology and the tactics and strategies that a lot of business professionals would teach in their sales training would be around this concept that the seller has more information about the product or service than the buyer does, and that the seller can use that information asymmetry, their larger knowledge or information base, to have more power in the sales process, and to use that to, in a lot of ways, manipulate the buyer. So I may know, as a used car salesman, that this is a great car, really flashy. I know that the warranty is going, that the year after the warranty, it's really common for these cars to have, some type of trouble with their transmission, let's say. I'm holding that information, and I'm just not going to let that person, the person I'm trying to sell, become aware that the warranty policy is pretty crappy because it doesn't cover or extend over a very common issue. And I can use that to my advantage in the sales process. Now, that is one of the traditional methodologies or models with sales. And you guys may even see or be heard or be told from mentors, advisors, etc., that as you're trying to sell your product, it's important to not give the whole store away, not to give all of your information out there, or to maybe withhold or downplay weaknesses within your product or things that you might think that whoever you're trying to sell to, you may think that they don't want to hear. And so you're going to withhold that information. What I want to argue, though, is that information asymmetry, to a large extent, doesn't exist anymore in the world of business. So that, traditional factor where the seller had more information about the product or service than the buyer, that asymmetry has flattened by and large, primarily since about the year 99-2000. And that's because, it was catalyzed by Google, which made most information on any subject and in business on any company, product, etc., available. And it's been accelerated by other websites like Glassdoor or RateMyProf.com. You can think of many, many examples where consumers can get very accurate and timely information about a product, a service, a company online before they ever even engage in a buying process. And so this information asymmetry, now that that's flattened, now that's no longer the case, that's a huge trend that is going to underpin and be accelerated by COVID, that is going to really be disruptive in terms of your sales process. If you are still trying to engage in sales by downplaying or withholding negative information about your product, there's a very, very good chance the buyer already is aware of that, and that's going to become a problem in your sales transaction, your sales process at some point in time, okay? The next trend that I wanted to talk about is that the marketplace in general is becoming much, much more crowded. Doesn't really matter which category, which sector you're in, there are more people building businesses in that industry or category than there ever were in history. And part of that is because entrepreneurship is becoming increasingly accessible. Part of the reason for that, of course, there are cultural influences. Shark Tank is a great example. Consistently one of the highest rated shows in the United States and around the world around entrepreneurship. There's also been, awareness building activities like Apex is a great example within the education system where from K to 12 or in the post-secondary education, entrepreneurship is increasingly being presented as a career option, and there's awareness building taking place around that. But again, no surprise, technology has been the biggest catalyst towards this change where entrepreneurship is becoming much more accessible. Technology's broken down a lot of traditional barriers towards people becoming entrepreneurs and has overall just democratized entrepreneurship. And some of those technology examples would be things, a traditional barrier to an entrepreneur would be, how can I get a bank to finance me, or how do I raise investment or some type of funding to support my startup capital costs? Well, we have things like Kickstarter now that exist and that make that process much more accessible. Where's a market that I can sell to? Well, Amazon or Facebook Marketplace or other aspects of e-commerce have flattened that and reduced that barrier to identifying the market you can sell to. Marketing channels in and of it themselves, Facebook, Google, Instagram, the list goes on in terms of online advertising options that you can get your product in front of potential buyers with a level of accuracy that's never been seen before in the history of business worldwide until now. And then also, broken down barriers in terms of distribution with, again, Amazon and even traditional companies like FedEx and UPS having new programs and options for very early stage business owners or small business owners. Another really good indication of how crowded the marketplace is on this next slide. So what you're looking at is a graph that represents the global number of websites over time. And you can see in the year 2000 that there was just about 3 million websites in the world, okay? Just about 3 million. By 2018, that's increased to almost 2 billion. We're just over, 1.75 million closing. So I would guess today's numbers is pretty close to 2 billion websites by 2021. That's a really, not perfect indicator, but a pretty good indicator in terms of where things are going and how crowded the marketplace is becoming because of this increasing accessibility to entrepreneurship. So just to quickly recap some of these trend lines, first trend line, future of work. less people are dealing with more work and having to deal with more complicated problems because of that increasing adoption of automation and artificial intelligence. Second big trend line is that information asymmetry, where your customers probably know more about you than you may know about them. And then thirdly, within a crowded marketplace, it's becoming harder and harder to break through the noise. So, the question, that can seem like a pretty, negative or bleak outlook in terms of your business success. But I would ask you guys, with all of these forces working against us, what do you think that we can do as entrepreneurs and business owners to overcome some of these challenges, or to align with where some of these trend lines are going? Anybody have any ideas? And I'll let you know, I'm thinking of one word that it's not a full silver bullet, there never is, but there's one word that really describes, I think, what each of us should be focusing on as it relates to our sales to align with these trends. Does anyone have any ideas?
I would say solve.
Solve, okay. You got solve from a sim. Any other ideas? I see honesty. Dawson said honesty. Any other ones? Differentiate. I see Dawson got a thumbs up for his honesty. Adapt. Adaptability. Certainly, these are all elements that I agree. Engage, absolutely. I think honesty is pretty close to what I have in mind, but I would say it a little bit differently, and that is, in a word, authenticity. And so what I would argue is that authenticity needs to be the cornerstone of your sales strategy to succeed in this environment that's being impacted by the trend lines we just discussed. And so what do we mean by authenticity? Well, a couple verbs or adjectives and definitions. Authenticity, originality, real, true, honest, certifiable. Those would be all, synonyms of authenticity. What it really means is being true to your personality, spirit, or character, and that you aren't imitating another business or presenting, a false imitation of yourself. You want to be really, really true to yourself, your own character, your company's character, and the personality or spirit of the company that you're trying to build. There needs to be that authenticity within what you're trying to accomplish. And so where authenticity can play against some of the trend lines that we talked about would include, for the future of work, well, if that means that people, are dealing with more complicated problems and there's less people there in general, authenticity will get people's attention quicker and will inform what is going to be a compelling pitch that resonates with them. So a tailor-made sales pitch is really, really important if you're already having difficulty breaking through and getting the attention of those individuals with so much on their plate. In terms of information asymmetry, authenticity as a sales strategy is built on trust and real, honest, authentic connections. And you're not in an authentic sales pitch trying to pull one over on someone because you have more information that they do. Okay. And then finally, a couple of you mentioned differentiation. I would argue that authenticity is the best differentiation strategy, and it will help for you to be seen as different from the competition by embracing what makes you unique at your core, your unique mission and journey, and that the sales pitch is based more on that than it is on product or service features or price point, etc. Because everyone can compete on price point, on product features, but there is only one you, and there's only one of your company that has a unique authentic sales strategy, and that represents everything that you're trying to accomplish. Okay. So I see we only got about 18 minutes left. I'm going to try and take you through at least one, hopefully two strategies that I think that you guys can use for authentic success. And the two strategies that I'll talk about is one, determining your purpose. So when we talk about authenticity, I mentioned that it's true to your personality, spirit, or character. In determining our purpose, we're going to try and get into elements of that as it relates to us as entrepreneurs and the businesses that we're running. So I'll take you through that. And then secondly, a lot of authenticity is based not only on what's true to you, but speaking it in a way that resonates with your audience. So a tailor-made pitch to your audience. And that a big part that informs that tailor-made pitch that can make or break it is being able to use this skill set we call emotional intelligence. And so hopefully I'll have a chance to talk about emotional intelligence as well, but we're going to start together with our purpose statement. So in determining your purpose, I guess the first question I have for you guys is what is a purpose? How would you define a purpose? What does that mean? And you guys feel free to raise your hand, and I can call on you for an answer, or just to throw something in the chat box if you have an idea. Anybody know what I mean by purpose? Gabrielle?
I would say it's like your reason for existing, like why you created your business.
Yeah, very, very on point. Your purpose is, the reason for which something is done or created, or the reason why it exists. So think about it as your big why, or this acronym BAG, your big, hairy, audacious goal. What are you trying to accomplish either in your life, or in this context with your business? You can also think about it as an entrepreneur as your personal mission statement. You have a mission statement for the business, and that actually could very well be the purpose. You yourself as an entrepreneur, depending on how early stage you are, might want to actually develop a purpose statement for yourself as an entrepreneur that's going to guide some of your business activities. Why do you guys think that purpose is important? We talked about the level of authenticity, but what do you guys think is important about having purpose? I see Xavier is saying, it's the North Star. I agree with that. Any other ideas in terms of why a purpose is important in business? Stephanie?
Because it connects you to your business, like it motivates you and it ties you to it. So you both kind of move together, I would say.
Absolutely. Yeah, I very much agree with your answer, Stephanie. Thank you for saying that. So, it's important because it's your North Star. It connects you to your business. It will guide. I see in the chat box, there's some other answers, guiding your decision making. People can understand and relate to it, will help to define your business overall. All of those are exactly right. So how do we actually go about determining your purpose statement? There's a quick exercise that you guys can do. And maybe with the time that we have, I'll actually ask you guys to think about doing this on the sidelines of Apex within your team. But it can be relatively simple. I know purpose statement and that North Star, that can be kind of daunting to people. So this exercise will help you to break that down. And it really concentrates on answering three questions. So one is, what do you enjoy? Secondly is, what are you good at? And thirdly is, how do you want to serve the world? Or another way of asking that question is, what breaks your heart? In business, you can also draw, I'm sure everyone's familiar with the SWOT tool. You can take your strengths from your SWOT for your business, and that can essentially be your list of what you're good at. You can certainly add to it if you'd like. But where these three circles intersect between what you're good at, what you enjoy, and how you want to serve the world, where those three things converge, that will inform your purpose. And I would suggest that when you're developing, your mission or vision statement, that for your business, that you undertake this exercise to ensure that there is alignment and interconnection between these three areas that will inform your purpose. Okay, so you can write down, I would suggest at least a list of 5, maybe 10 things of what you're good at or what your business is good at, what you enjoy, what gives you and your team members, co-founders a lot of satisfaction. And that could be in business as well as in life, right? And then also to think about, how do you want to serve the world, or what breaks your heart? What's that, more impact-oriented element? Try and find the opportunities where they intersect, and then that can become your purpose statement. So just as a quick example, I'll give you, this would be mine from a personal side. So this isn't Planet Hatch, but this would be more of my personal purpose statement. What I'm good at, a few things that I wrote down: sales, public speaking, creativity, teamwork, leadership. Those are certainly some skills or things that I would consider myself relatively good at. What do I enjoy? Well, I really enjoy working with people. I really get a lot of satisfaction of seeing how I can make an impact, especially in my community. I am the type of person that's not satisfied, not being busy. I have to have a lot of things on the go at a given time, and I definitely enjoy that. Also take that one life approach to business. I've always wanted a career that would include both personal elements, and I could be myself at work, and also, bring and integrate some of my work into some of my personal endeavors. I've always been interested in innovation and politics. Well, the third bucket of, how I want to serve the world, or what breaks my heart personally. Well, what has broken my heart personally, living in a province like New Brunswick, is seeing a lot of friends and family leaving for economic opportunity elsewhere. Okay, so where do those three areas, those three circles intersect for me is, and how I came to my personal purpose statement is identifying those elements. And my personal purpose statement would be for New Brunswick to become what we call a have province, or an economically prosperous province in Canada. And that's not tied to a specific job for me. Just as when you do your business purpose statement, it won't be tied to a specific product. It will probably be something larger than that. It also is probably not something that's, super measurable. You may never actually achieve your ultimate purpose, but it is that North Star to drive towards. And it provides a lot of flexibility where you can identify, when opportunities come your way, whether they fit into your purpose statement or not. So someone had indicated in the chat, it will help to guide decision making. And that's absolutely true, because over, the long entrepreneurial journey you're all embarking on, there's going to be tons of opportunities, a bunch of different times where you may have to pivot. Customers, is it a good customer, a bad customer? If you have that purpose statement, it can help to guide those decisions for you. And how it relates to sales is, if you are coming in with a pitch that it's, hey, I want, like in Planet Hatch, for example, if I want one of you as an entrepreneur to join our programs, I can definitely go to you and say, that I really think that you should join our Sales Accelerator program. Here's some of the benefits. Graduates of it have increased, their monthly recurring revenue by 200% on average, et cetera, et cetera. That could be compelling to you, but there are also incubators, accelerators, if you think of the global context, that would have similar features, similar programs, etc. But if I lead to you is that Planet Hatch is really on, a mission to develop globally competitive entrepreneurs, and our purpose is because we want to see a really thriving, economically prosperous province, and we think that your company has the potential to really contribute to that, and that this program would be really useful in helping you to get there, to seeing that larger idea achieved, then that may be more compelling, and certainly is going to be more authentic of what actually makes you tick. Okay? I'll stop there quickly just to see if there's any questions around purpose and the tool that I just gave you in terms of helping to define what your purpose is. Any quick questions? All right, I don't see any. Awesome. So hopefully that will be useful.
You're muted, Adam.
All right. So thanks for letting me know. So the second piece that I want to take you through is around emotional intelligence. As I mentioned, you know, it's one thing to be able to really understand what your purpose is. It's another thing to put yourself into the shoes of other individuals. And so, you know, how do we define emotional intelligence? It's something that we talk about a lot, or you may hear of quite a bit, but may be harder to wrap your mind or your arms around. And essentially, there's two components to emotional intelligence. One is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage your own personal emotions. Secondly, is the ability to recognize, understand, and influence the emotions of other people. And so in sales, both of these elements of emotional intelligence are really important, right? First, understanding who you're trying to sell to and the types of emotions or personality that you need to tailor your message to. And then secondly, being able to manage your own emotions and put them in alignment with the person you're talking to try and achieve the best outcome, which in this case would be a successful sell, right? So emotional intelligence, again, from the authenticity standpoint, yes, you want to be able to adapt to what the other person is doing, but doing it in an authentic way and understanding yourself first and managing those emotions first is really, really important. Not going to go too much into that, but I will talk to you about some strategies very quickly, you know, how to pick up on that of others. And that's through this activity. So I'm not sure, Nandi, do we have any buffer time that we can go over where we started a little bit later, or do we have a hard stop at 1:30?
No, we can go on.
Okay, so if you guys want, for anyone that wants to continue on, this should only take about 5 minutes, and then we'll leave it open for questions for about 5 minutes afterwards. But the activity that I want you to do is, you see on this slide here, there's a series of different words. I want you to start writing down the words that you think best represent you at work or in a business setting, okay? And you should have about 10 to 15. So I'll give it until 1:27, and I want you to write down as many words as you think represents you in a work setting. Okay, you should be able to come up with 10 to 15. So we'll just give that another minute or two. Maybe Nandi, you can be a good gauge. How are you making out with writing down some of your words?
Sorry about that, Adam. My Teams window had.
Oh, no problem. Did I'll put it to the group. How are you guys making out? Do you have 10 or so words written down? Or do you need more time? Felix is done. Thanks, Felix. We'll give it maybe 10 more seconds, and then we'll move forward. All right. So moving forward, if I draw these two lines across the page, I'm making 4 quadrants, okay? You guys can see there's one top left, top right, bottom left. There's 4 quadrants here. I want you guys to tally up the amount of words you selected in each of those quadrants, okay? So just count up and total the number of words that you wrote down in each of these 4 quadrants I just made on the page. I'll give you just a couple more minutes to, or maybe a minute to do that. And maybe someone can just let me know when they've tallied it up in the chat box. I'll use that as an indicator to move forward. All right, see, Gabrielle is done. So, awesome, thank you guys. So the reason I've asked you to do this activity is based on psychological research that can categorize different personality types based on how they react to different situations and under the prism of emotional intelligence. Some of you may be familiar with other personality studies like Myers-Briggs, etc. This is from the same body of research. The difference is that, you know, Myers-Briggs, I think there's 24 different personality types. This simplifies that down to 4. So it's much more usable in day-to-day life. And the 4 personality types are kind of easy to reference because they correspond with a bird. So in the next slide, I'm going to tell you which bird you are, which personality bird type you are based on the highest number of words you circled, based on the quadrants that you have the most words circled in. And what I would ask you is, as we walk through those personality types, think about what that implies for your sales strategies. So depending on the bird you're talking to, and depending on the bird you are, that is one very quick and easy way, if you understand the personality types, to be able to quickly assess how you might want to change your pitch so it's authentic to you and to the business, but is going to resonate much better with the person you're trying to sell to, okay? So the birds, where they correspond to, if you had most of your words in the top left-hand quadrant, you're an owl, okay? So you can just write that down and remember it. Top right-hand corner, you're an eagle. Bottom left-hand corner, you're a dove. Bottom right-hand corner, you're a peacock. What I also want to make clear is that, you know, because this is simplified, this is not going to, you know, don't consider this 110% accurate psychological test, right? These are based on 2 spectrums. The first spectrum is the vertical one you see going down, that is between task-oriented and relationship-oriented. So you may be further or less extreme on the spectrum based on your own personality type, but understand it's a spectrum. The second spectrum is between reactive and proactive, which you see going horizontally across the page. When I say task-oriented, I mean, you know, someone that feels a strong need to write things off their to-do list. They need to get those tasks done. Versus relationship-oriented, put in the example of your teams. You know, if you have co-founders with the startups you're working on, are you the type of person that even if there isn't full consensus in the team, you feel a strong urge to get the job done, to move forward, even if everyone's not on the same page because there's a deadline approaching or there's some, you know, you feel that need to get it done? Or are you the type of person that would feel much more strongly you want to have consensus, that everyone's on the same page, etc., even if it means you're going to miss a deadline. Those would be the two ends of the spectrum. From reactive to proactive, I don't mean this you're a procrastinator or you're not. It's more your preference in terms of leading within a group. So the example I'll often use is if you're getting together with a group of people and you decide that you're going to go out to eat for a restaurant, go out to a restaurant to eat that night. Are you the type of person that's going to say, oh, I think we should go here and here's the reasons why? Maybe there's an app night or, you know, a discount, or they have really great wings, let's say, what have you. Or are you the type of person that's going to say, oh, well, I'm easy. I'll do whatever everyone else wants to do. If you're proactive side of the spectrum, you're going to come up with that idea, have no hesitation putting it out to be considered by the group, and you typically would have reasons for why that's the best case. If you're more of the reactive personality type on the spectrum, you're not going to have a strong preference towards that, and you're pretty flexible and adaptable to whatever the rest of the group decides. So those would be those two spectrums. Now I'll just quickly list some of the traits that you find in each bird personality type. And you guys can tell me later if this is right or not as it relates to you. But the owls, being task-oriented and reactive-oriented birds on the spectrum, are going to be quite fact-oriented. They would typically have a pretty strong need to be accurate, and they would often be described as organized, systemic. They might have a little bit of a slower reaction time because they're analyzing the data that's coming in. That can sometimes get them in trouble because you may see some of what we call analysis paralysis, really hard to move forward because not all of the data is in, or you have imperfect information. They can be described as pretty serious or industrious, methodical, and tenacious in the work setting. Okay. The second personality type would be eagle. And eagle, as a task-oriented and proactive bird, would typically be described as goal-oriented, have a need to see results, pretty quick reaction time, and decisive. So different from the owl, the eagle is pretty comfortable making decisions even if they have imperfect information. They can often be described as independent, practical, direct in terms of their feedback or commentary to the rest of their group members. Doves and peacocks, more on the relationship-oriented of the spectrum. And doves, being a reactive bird, are typically described as highly valuing personal security and acceptance. They really prioritize cooperation, are described as personable, enthusiastic, loyal, typically very emotionally intelligent birds, very perceptive of what others may be going through or how they may react. Very conflict averse. The doves do not like to have conflict at work because they want to have a very cooperative or consensus-based team. And they highly value teamwork. And then finally, the peacocks, described as sociable, strong need to be accepted by others, enthusiastic, impulsive, future-oriented, don't spend a lot of time thinking back on things, thinking about, what's coming up next. Very conceptual, innovative type personalities. And sometimes can be a little bit undisciplined. You see them diametrically opposed to the owl, who are described as much more methodical and tenacious. So the key takeaway here, I think, as it relates to your sales is that you want to be trying to identify early who you're selling to, what type of bird type they are, and use language, whether it is verbal or body language, etc., and tailor your pitch based on how they're going to receive that information, right? Know that, if you're selling to an owl, they're going to want to go through all of the details of the product. And it's probably going to be a slower sales cycle if you're dealing with an owl because they have a strong need for that information. Versus a peacock, who's typically more, personable and enthusiastic, and doesn't have that that need of discipline in their work. They might be individuals you can get away with a handshake agreement, right? And you're pitching them based on the personality aspect, the enthusiasm, feeding into that energy that the peacocks are so well known for. Okay, so just a couple of the examples, and I also want to mention that depending on what bird you fall into, understand how your communication style is. All of us have a bias in that. And so what you want to do, authenticity really comes through when you take your own bird type needs and your biases and try to find a strategy that is going to connect with the individual you're selling to. And a lot of that can start with your purpose statement, where you draw from that initial cornerstone. So I know we're already 7 minutes over time, so I'll stop there. I hope that this has been useful, both in terms of the trend lines that are coming up and how that might affect your company, and then some tools and strategies to be able to develop more authentic sales strategy for your company. Of course, available to answer any questions for whatever time we have now, and certainly hope to connect with you guys more throughout the Apex competition and beyond. If you'd like to connect digitally, would be happy to do so. So thanks for the opportunity to be with you all today. Hopefully it was valuable, and I'll turn it back to you, Nandi.
Thanks so much, Adam. That was really great. Thanks so much for taking the time. If anybody wants to stay on this meeting and if you have questions, feel free to, like yesterday after the networking event, after the panel session. I think, Adam, you and I have a meeting at 2:30.
We do.
Yeah. So, but feel free to turn your camera on, turn your mic on if you have any questions. If you want to raise any questions or points, feel free to do that. I'll leave the meeting running for a while.
Thank you, Nandi, and thank you, Adam. It was a really, insightful session. Amazing insights. Just quick question, which I wrote as well. Is it? And I think it may. You can better comment on that. Is it possible that we have different personality traits professionally and personally, and how do you deal in terms of sales when you encounter that? Because when you're selling, and it relates to your very initial point. You have to be genuine, you have to be honest, you have to be you have to come what you are, right, as what you are. What's your take on, like, how do we deal with this, like, combination of different traits? Like, okay, a person professionally is, for instance, an owl, but personally they may be a dove. They may like to be friendly, they might like to be easygoing and all that. So what's your take and thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that you picked up on something really important, and first I would just say absolutely true. It is not uncommon to have one bird personality type or traits of a bird personality type they're vastly more emphasized at a work setting, and different ones are going to be emphasized or come to the surface in a personal setting. It's funny, I've done this exercise with my family. And so what's funny, dad was an owl at work, dad was an owl in the home. Mom, who plays a different role, I think, at home than she does within her work, she would be a dove at home. I think classic mother, really putting a high priority on cooperation and harmony, and that everyone feels involved and settled. But at work, she really would correspond much more to the owl. She's very data-driven, research, methodical, etc. And so I think, one of the ways to think about that is, what does your environment call you for? What does the environment you're in, either at work or in life, how does that change? Where do you feel like the demands are coming from? Because often we're trying to adapt to our environment. And so you'll have those traits come through. So that's one thing to be conscious of. I think in the professional world, you also want to be conscious and to be thinking about this. Like, it's good to do this type of activity over a period of time, because you may see changes depending on the role you're in, your seniority within an organization, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think the biggest takeaway is try to identify where those are. What I would say is that it's very uncommon for, even if you do have that split between at work and at home, it's uncommon for the traits that are more emphasized at home to come through at work, because your environment is going to change that in a big way. I also think as a side note, this remote work with COVID that we've all been experiencing, there's been I'm trying to think of the word that describes it, but there's been some confusion some people have experienced, and that's been part of the overall pressure that some people is that they're in physical environment at home and there's a role there, and there's not as much separation between the role that they play at work. And so you've seen some difficulties between that interchange with the roles. But hopefully that helps to answer your question, Asim.
It does. It does. And really valuable. And thanks for sharing your personal examples. I do want to do this with my family as well.
Well, good luck. Good luck.
Thank you.
I saw Dawson in the chat box had just asked whether there's a bird type that you see often with entrepreneurs. It's a really good question. I'll first say that I've seen entrepreneurs of every bird type, and entrepreneurs of every bird type be successful, and entrepreneurs of every bird type be unsuccessful. So I don't think it corresponds. However, I definitely think, when you're at a state, especially for those founders who are building their startup as a team, you have 3 or 4 co-founders. As you guys start to mature as a company, particularly when you're ready to bring the product to market, I would suggest it is very valuable to do this exercise with your co-founders and teammates, because you're starting to develop at that point in time more specific roles of what each person is going to play within the company. And if there's a misalignment between role and bird personality type, it's not a breaking moment, but it could lead to potential issues later on. And so this can be really valuable to understand the strengths and the roles that people would more naturally gravitate to, and should improve overall communication in and amongst the team of co-founders. So hopefully that helps to answer your question, Dawson. I see Min just wrote, what you think a team of various bird types thrives better than a team of 1 to 2 types? Yeah, so I'm definitely a big believer in, having that diversity of skill sets and personalities in a team. I feel like that diversity of views, of personalities, of experiences will set you up for more success. I'm also a really firm believer, if you're more of a solo entrepreneur and as you start to build out your team, you should hire people for your weaknesses. So having a really good understanding of your personality type, and then hiring or trying to bring people onto your team that have different personality types, I think is going to be really valuable for a number of reasons. One, it will help to cover your back. There's certain tasks that you just more often are not oriented to. A good example is that an eagle bird personality type will often find themselves in a leadership position. And that's because they're very task oriented. They're pretty direct in their communication style. So it's not uncommon to see, the CEO of a new company is an eagle personality type. I can say as an eagle myself, I would be nowhere without the owl on my team. And that's because one of the traits that I would have is that I, have a pretty quick reaction time, fairly decisive, don't have a need to have all of the information and perfect information for me to make a decision. However, there's some real potential flaws with that model if it's only me making decisions every time without getting into the details. And so I have an owl on my team who I rely on to get, much more into the details, to be able to slow us down when they think that we're getting a little bit, out in front of our skis. And so that can be really, really complementary. So my advice to any founder would be try to identify, other birds that can join your flock and can cover some of the weaknesses that you might have. I see Nandy had a question. So do we naturally adopt a personality trait in a setting, or can we consciously change it? I think somewhat both. right? So the way I would think about this question is that, you know, it's amazing, one, to see what people can do when their environment calls for it. So when they feel the pressure and their backs up against the wall, they're typically able to do or use skill sets that they may not have thought they had or that they enjoyed. So I think all of us have elements of each of the bird personality types we can draw on. I also think that there's a number of elements of bird personality traits that it's much more preference, right? So again, taking that example of myself and the owl on my team, one of the areas that the owl does really, really well for me is around the bookkeeping, the accounting, the forecasting. And so I'm really good with the high picture and being able to, get in that space, and they're much more comfortable around the details of that. Now, if called upon by my environment, I would be able to get into those details. But it's more of my preference that I don't like to work. It's not what I enjoy. It's not necessarily what I'm good at. It'll take a lot of time. So I think that you do have that ability, but these personality types are largely based around preferences and around where your preferences may be where your natural abilities lie. Pretty good correlation between preference and where your natural abilities are. Another element or example I would use is think about athletes. So, you know, pro athletes, I think for the most part, all of them are born with, you know, genetics and more natural ability and tendency to be able to use their athletic skills. But any pro athlete would tell you that if you are not taking time to think about how you can improve them, do the hard work of improving those skills and abilities, then you're never going to be an exceptional athlete, even if you come to it with natural abilities. And those that don't have natural abilities, well, maybe they're not, you know, playing in the NBA, but they are able to, you know, with work and with intention and planning, further develop those skill sets. And I think the same is true for a lot of the skill sets that are representative of the different bird personality types. Hopefully that answers your question, Nandi. Any other questions for me, things that would be helpful? Well, if not, I'll just say, oh, I see Stephanie's hand up. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi, Adam. Oh, sorry, that's my son. Can you stop? Just close it for a second. Yeah, okay, sorry, I'm sorry. Working at home. That's my son. He gets really excited. Anyway, so sorry.
No problem.
I had a question about going back to authenticity and wondered if, in your experience, you could pull out an example of an instance where a company was not led, or like what was evident that a company wasn't, or the founder or whatever it was wasn't, like what piece of evidence shows that inauthenticity versus something that shows authenticity?
Yeah, really great example, or a really great question, I should say. And I'm thinking of an example. Stephanie, how old is your son, by the way?
He's 10.
He's 10, and where are you guys located?
We're in Waterloo, Ontario.
Oh, okay, awesome. Glad that you could join us from Waterloo.
Thank you.
And no worries about the interruptions. We're all dealing with that these days. So I think that actually is a really great example of a tactic within authentic sales, right? And so I think that it's, you know, I can think of 1,000 different examples of, you know, areas where people have got them in trouble. But I think the biggest thing is that they're starting to focus, like traditional sales would say, focus on your features, focus on your price point. Those are the main differentiators. And then focus on telling this person why they need your product over and over and over again, right? Like, this is the best, this is great, you're not going to find anything else, you know, better than it. This is what other people have said, da, 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 da. And one area of authenticity that I guess I would encourage everyone to think about is how can you use vulnerability to get into a more authentic connection? An example with your son is a really good one, right? Like everyone is dealing with that. I find that experience much more relatable. If you were trying to sell me something and you're saying, okay, well, I have a son, and I imagine, Stephanie, if you go back to your purpose statement, you're probably going to find your son, or if you have any other children, they're going to make up, you know, probably what you love in that box. And maybe there's something in the, you know, how you want to serve the world, or your purpose statement, right? So if you can find opportunities to align the purpose statement, maybe, intentionally try to show some vulnerability through it, that can really be what sets you apart and differentiates you. In this world where people are having to deal with more complex problems, there's more people that are trying to sell to them, and they probably have as much information on the surface about your product, your business, your service, etc. So when I think about authenticity, if you are only allowing yourself to compete on information that customers already have about you, there's really no reason for you to even be at the table to have.